Newsfeed PM continues now. The Ethekwini Municipality is optimistic about a prosperous beach season as it's shared results of its latest water sample tests. Of 11 beaches in the central area, only 2 beaches have shown critically high E. coli levels. Meanwhile, the city of Cape Town says its popular beaches meet world-class standards as per independent water sample analysis. For more on this conversation, we're joined now by environmental specialist Alter Nyiko Mavunda-Mbele, who is with the Development Bank of South Africa. Good to have you with us. Thank you very much for your time. From a financial institution point of view, with an eye for environmental affairs, how do you view the situation of these assets of South Africa that in most instances, especially around this time, find themselves not really at the level that they need to be environmentally?
Thank you so much for this time. Regarding the water quality in the beaches, they are, as you indicated, they've just released the water results. They gave assurance of about, I'll say, majority of the beaches being ready for the season. Their water quality independent companies giving assurance also that the beaches are ready. The water quality standard with regard specific to E. coli that contains very dangerous pathogens that can cause harm to people. It is very ready. This brings assurance that our institutions are really in control of this water quality problem in the beaches.
Yeah. In some instances, you would find that it becomes short-lived, this clean status, at least that is reported from the water samples. And very soon, because of, we're talking here floods, we're talking here a lack of infrastructure maintenance, that that particular clean report is very quickly affected, and there's a deterioration in terms of the quality. Is there something that particularly can be done to increase the resources that are required operationally to ensure that these environments are always at the level where they are sustainable and compliant?
So coming to operations, you have the normal operations where it's normal, no incident of floods. So in that case, the metros are in charge of their operations. They have their monitoring schedule on par. The maintenance of the pollution sources like the wastewater treatment plants are running normally. But in the abnormal situations, like when you experience extreme events like flood that are caused by climate change, you find that their operations is not normal. You have seen around May, mid-year this year, most of the beaches, around 6 beaches in Ethekwini, yes, they were closed because of those floods that were experienced in Durban. So there is a difference of managing water quality in the normal situation and water quality in an abnormal situation. So in an abnormal situation, that's where you find they are forced to close because the pollution sources, which are sewage, wastewater treatment plants, are not managed properly. Some of them are not like operating normally. Some of them, they have overflowed. All those sewage have run into the sea. And that's where they report the high water quality of the high E. coli in the water quality. So that's the difference between the two. So in terms of the metros to manage this, they should be having a normal operational schedule for water quality and the abnormal. For sure, they have taken the lessons from what happened or during floods, which is, I call it under abnormal situations.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, as a nation, maybe even as a continent, I know yourself, you would have an eye on not just South Africa, but the rest of the continent. We have an appreciation of the science of environmental degradation and its effects on economies.
Yes, definitely. Environmental degradation is a very broad term because it touches in different environmental spheres that we have. There is air, water. Today, specific, we're talking about water. In the continent, yes, a number of environmental scientists are increasing, which also increase the awareness in the continent in terms of how we need to take care of the environment so it can also take care of us. I remember when I was still at the university, one of my lecturers used to say, who said you should manage the environment? Because the environment can take care of itself. So it's us human people or human activities, our economies that pollute or degrade the environment. However, it is important that in our normal operation, in our economies, we incorporate environmental management systems, like in this situation, in our topic today, the water monitoring programs for different spheres like your air quality, your water quality, in order to understand how our economies or our operations are impacting the environment in what spheres. So what encourages me is that in the continent itself, most of African countries, they have regulations or laws that regulate environmental impact. So it's no longer how it was when I was still young, where there was no environmental laws. It was a new thing. Even when I was still at the university, very few people understood exactly what it is. I remember some asking me, are you sure about the degree that you're doing? What are you going to work? What will you do? But today, the awareness is very high. That's what is encouraging. And I'm happy to be part of that.
Yeah. Is that, though, nearly enough? I mean, do you see fines that are adequate enough? Do you see compensation that is adequate enough in terms of the legal costs, I suppose? Or do we need newer regulations, particularly considering that there are, of course, new risks that come with climate change that needs to be put in place?
In South Africa specific and the other countries that I've been exposed to in the continent, we have great environmental laws, great water quality standard set by Water Affairs here in South Africa. What is important is the mentality of compliance that we have, especially the polluters. When Water Affairs issue a water use license to operation, you'll find, I'll give you example, along those beaches, how many operators that discharge into the sea. You find it's a lot of polluters in that particular catchment, but everyone want to comply to their water quality regulation or water quality conditions given by Water Affairs to them, because if they are found not to be compliant, they will be fined. But the issue is not necessarily compliant, it's the impact at the receptor, which is the catchment itself or the beach or the sea, or whatever the case is. So what can work better, according to my understanding, it's the regional water monitoring. They're all operators in that particular catchment. If they come together to work together on the sort of a regional water quality monitoring to control pollution going into the sea, instead of I'm doing my own water quality compliance in my little operation, the next door is not. The problem remains downstream at the catchment where everyone is trying to prevent. But if we work together collective as the operators or the private sector in that particular catchment, we can do better. The main objective is to protect the catchment that we operate on, not necessarily to be found compliant. Compliance is an add-on. It's a control measure that Water Affairs have put in there. But coming collective beyond compliance to the water use license, that's what is required to protect our catchments.
Keeping pace with, of course, international good practices, which I'm sure you've got an eye on in your purview, what are some of the systems that are put in place, particularly early warning assessment systems on the quality of water that are reliable? Because, you know, I would have had conversation, for example, with 3 testing facilities, one for government, one for private sector, one for civil society, and they would all give me different results at different times. Government would say it's all systems go. You'll have a civil society group coming in saying, no, we did our own testing at 7 p.m. tonight, and it's not all systems go. So in terms of good practice internationally, what are those risk assessment systems that can be put in place, early warning, that are reliable and certainly transparent?
Is the water quality guidelines standards? We have different guidelines. You have the UN water quality guidelines, the World Health Organization. For me, the standard we have, the water quality guideline here in South Africa, it's aligned with the international standards. So I wouldn't really not saying the water quality, even if you bring your World Health Organization, it differs according to the water quality parameter that you are monitoring. In this case, we're talking about E. coli, which is a biological water parameter that we need to monitor. But to say this one is best, this one is not the best, it differs with the water use. For the guideline, they have different monitoring parameters for different water use. In this case, for the purpose of the recreation, there are certain standards. So those organizations are bringing different water quality results. But the first thing to understand is what were they testing for in order to say this is right or this is not right. So there is that differentiation. But I trust our water quality standard guidelines for different water use in South Africa. It's quite aligned to international standards.
Nyiko, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. Environmental specialist with the Development Bank of South Africa, Alter Nyiko Mavunda-Mbele.